So let's set the scene, shall we? It's 2012 and majority of modern gaming is being run by first-person shooter IPs. In November of 2011, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 released by Activision, and this is the highest rated Call of Duty game up until this point in time and still remains to be the highest rated Call of Duty game ever. Moving forward to the year 2012, we see other first-person shooter games from really large IPs come out such as Halo 4, Borderlands 2, and the FPS that most likely spared the year in late October with BO2. Now, there's one game or one gaming franchise that I've neglected to mention so far, and I have a pretty valid reason on neglecting to mention this franchise.
Now, if you so happen to read the title of the video and know it's about Resident Evil, you're probably wondering why I'm starting off the video discussing action games in the year of 2012. And for that, I need to give you a not so long history lesson on an era of Resident Evil that I would personally like to call the show. Or you can call it the shooter era, it doesn't really matter to me. So starting in 2005, after a long stint in which Capcom's direction with the Resident Evil franchise was directly and just solely horror, this being roughly from 1996 with the title release of Resident Evil 1 to the last true mainline canonical title in Resident Evil 0 in 2002. The franchise's new title, Resident Evil 4, featured an entirely different set of gameplay features. Instead of sludging around through hallways with less than ideal camera angles guiding your path, and enemies needing to be mag-dumped just to stay down, and in some cases, that not even working, we were introduced to a faster-paced shooter with less incentive focus on management of resources, as when you killed enemies, you were awarded currency with the intention of buying more powerful equipment like a riot shotgun, RPG, infrared snipers, etc. Leon was clearly more experienced, and while you could argue that the BOWs remained the same, it was clear that the direction the franchise was being taken in was one in which the player's character felt totally more able. It took less shots to kill Granados than it did ones at the gas station back in Leon. Wow, that is not the wow, I completely botched that recording. Okay, basically what I was trying to say is it took less shots to kill Granados than it did killing one zombie at the station with Leon back in Resident Evil 2. And instead of running from one zombie, you mowed down thousands of infected Plaga, and this trend would continue with the next Resident Evil mainline title. Okay, so Resident Evil 5 doubles down on all the action related to RE4, and almost all elements of survival or horror are completely erased. This game is the complete antithesis of the identity that Resident Evil had built up for itself in every title up until this point. And at least I can give RE4 the benefit of the doubt and say at least their atmosphere was inherently scary. The castle and the village sections were really good atmospherically with a pretty dark setting. The only thing dark in this game is the excessive amount of Africans that the game forces you to shoot. Alright, so maybe I worded that pretty bad, but in my defense, that is the synopsis of the game's main enemy type for at least the first hour or so. But for the sake of not getting this video flagged, I'll just say that it so happens to be African people infected with the Ouroboros virus. Even the plot began to become more desensitized to outlandish material, like even the AI became more action-focused. RE4 saw the player take Ashley into account when entering combat sequences, and that element of thought was erased with Sheva, a less than adaptive AI that shot at anything in its path. That is, of course, if you did not decide to play co-op. I also think that it's important to note that by this time the gaming environment also shifted as a whole. Call of Duty, Halo, and other IPs were in, and scary games even took a more gun-heavy approach, such as games like Dead Space. And all this brings us back to the year of 2012, where after 3 years of development, Jotaro Suga, which I really hope that I'm not butchering that, wrote the single greatest piece of fiction imaginable, in the form of Resident Evil 6. If in terms of scales of action, RE4 is like a Pichu, Resident Evil 5 is like a Pikachu, and then RE6 would be like Arceus. And you switch between 4 interwoven scenarios with members of 2 between each group, in which those characters can be controlled by one player via online or local multiplayer. There's a ton of new features that you'll most likely see in the latest Max Payne game. You can roll while shooting, roll and shoot, and you can roll while sliding, and those all become key parts of the combat loop as you develop your skills. There's also skill points when you kill enemies, as well as featuring a stamina bar. And all of this brings us to March of 2012. The world was introduced to the title of this video, the worst Resident Evil game I have ever had the displeasure of touching or playing. Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City was released to the public, and this game was set around the time of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. However, it is non-canonical, and to be honest, seeing this game and how its plot develops, I think that it's a really good thing that it isn't canon. When Slant 6 Games developed this game, I don't think Capcom gave them this with the task in mind that this would be a huge commercial success, in which ironically it was. It sold roughly 2.1 million units. To sum up the gameplay, it's pretty much an online multiplayer in which you pick characters proficient in different classes. It's kinda akin to a Killing Floor 2 if you ever played the game or you're familiar with it. I don't have any of my personal gameplay because on PS5 you can't save clips, but I played Vector, who's a recon of the Umbrella security service. I don't know much about this game, as I've only played roughly the first 3 to 5 missions, but they all consist of roughly the same exact thing. You mod through set pieces from Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. You fight the occasional BOW like the Hunters from Resident Evil 3, or you can fight the Lickers from Resident Evil 2, or sometimes you fight them both at the same time. The first couple missions see you being chased and shooting at William Birkin, and then fighting against Nikolai and his men. And to be honest, when I was playing this, the first thing I thought is, who's the target audience for this game? It can't be appealing to those who liked older games in the franchise such as Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 because this game is so vastly different from those two titles. And I don't think it's meant to be appealing to shooter lovers either. The gameplay is clunky, and I don't believe it's very satisfying. To make things worse, this was initially charged as a $60 game on consoles. And if you wanted a better shooter experience, you could get one at a vastly cheaper cost, or if you wanted to pay the same price, you can get one with such better quality than this one. And to make matters worse, I feel as if this game has similar properties to RE6, and in my opinion, I believe that RE6 can be an objectively fun game. It may not be the best Resident Evil game, but viewing it as a standalone title, it's fine. This game is not fine, neither as a Resident Evil game nor as a shooter. I wish this video was building up to much more, but this game just doesn't contain enough substance for me to evaluate it in its entirety. And it plays like slop. It kind of reminds me of other games like DC Online with the IP of a big franchise but no proper placement of character. I can't speak to what this game was like playing it around 2012 because I was only 4 years old. But I would imagine people back in 2012 that were able to play video games weren't playing Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. They were probably playing the games I've listed at the beginning of this video. This game just has no draw at all. I don't see why you would want to play it. And it kind of makes me glad that Resident Evil 7 came out and saved us from this terrible point of the franchise. In my personal opinion, I believe that Operation Raccoon City was just an indication that this franchise was going in a path of no return, and that survival horror was no longer within Resident Evil's identity, which sucked because I don't think that these games draw well. Resident Evil 6 did, it sold pretty well, but I think it's just because it's a Resident Evil game with shooting and guns, and I think that that drew a lot of people in the 2012s or the 2013s of the world. I don't believe that this game was very good at all, and yeah, I don't have much else to say about this game. That's about it. One thing I will say is pretty interesting is when I was playing this game, it didn't have dedicated online servers, and there were still people playing with me. I can show stats from across the board where there are real live humans playing this game, and they played it for a solid amount of time. My gameplay went from, I would like to say, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then I hopped off, and people were continuously still playing this game. So, you know, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm just being a negative Nancy, but yeah, I don't like this game. And it's just my personal opinion. You know, it's all subjective, but it's been Imflakes, and this has been the worst Resident Evil game that I've ever played. Until next time.